Hey everyone, this is James from Brewing Books. So I've decided to create a series of videos which I will be posting on a weekly basis on this channel to help anyone who is embarking for the very first time in reading the Silmarillion. So as I said in this series of videos, which hopefully will run to twice a week, each chapter in the book will be discussed, analyzed, to help you follow the story as we go along on this journey together, from the first to the last page. And let this also be an invitation to all of you out there who have already read the Silmarillion numerous times and would like to participate in the discussion by sharing your opinions and your thoughts on every chapter as we tackle it step by step. The comment section below will be open to anyone who would like to share their experiences of reading the Silmarillion, their thoughts about this particular chapter that we're tackling on that particular week. So feel free to share your love and passion for Tolkien and especially the Silmarillion. It's interesting now because it's been quite some time since I've read the Silmarillion, and I'm really excited to start rereading it again with you all as we go along through this rather remarkable book. Now, I had already done a video a while back explaining briefly what to expect from this book and how to prepare yourself for the first time reading the Silmarillion. So do check that video out, as there are some pretty useful tips and guidelines on how to start your journey with the Silmarillion. So let's start from the beginning and the obvious. Before delving into the Silmarillion, especially if it's your first time reading it, one needs to be aware that this is a posthumous work, in that Professor Tolkien had been working on these stories about the first stage and beyond that for almost 5 decades. Eventually, with his passing, his son Christopher embarked on a Herculean task to put in order this vast body of work that had been practically left unfinished by his father, and to basically craft it into a cohesive narrative that ultimately made sense. This ultimately meant having to integrate writings that were at different stages of development. So, for instance, some of the tales had been revised and updated later on in Professor Tolkien's life, but others had remained virtually unchanged from decades earlier. Naturally, the Silmarillion is a book that works. There is a clear narrative structure and flow to it, and all this thanks to Christopher Tolkien's immense work. But it also means that there are certain inconsistencies, some contradictory texts, and the sense of a sketched or draft feel to certain chapters. But all this gets almost ignored by the colossal scope and purpose of this work. To me, the Silmarillion, rather than a story, is a chronicle that details events about the creation of Arda, the world within which Middle-earth is situated, and the arrival and struggles of the different races of elves, men, and dwarves during the first few thousand years of its creation. And within these chronicles, we follow the stories of specific characters as their journeys intertwine with others. And some of these characters are either directly or indirectly present also in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So that's my advice on what to be aware of when you're starting to read the Silmarillion. Now, as we open our book, I would suggest having a look at the table of contents, just to start getting an idea of what's contained within the book. You'll soon realize that the Silmarillion is composed of 5 works, and this is precisely why I refer to it as a chronicle rather than a story. So we have the first 2 works, the Ainulindale and the Valaquenta. So one is about the initial creation of everything, and the other is an account about the powers that exist in this universe and world. Then we have the Quenta Silmarillion, which is the main body of work in this book. And Quenta Silmarillion can be translated as the history of the Silmarils. And the last two works that comprise this book are the Akallabet, or The Downfall of Numenor, and Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, which, even if you're remotely aware of the story in The Lord of the Rings, you pretty much get an idea of what it's all about. Now, you'll also notice that the Silmarillion comes with a letter included. This is a letter from J.R.R. Tolkien to a certain Milton Waldman, who was an editor with the London publisher Collins. This is a lengthy but fantastic letter in which Tolkien pretty much explains his motivation in writing his mythology, and it also provides a very well detailed summary of his entire legendarium. Now, I've always found myself on the fence with this letter, whether or not you should read it before or after tackling the Silmarillion. On the one hand, it provides a brilliant exposition on the main themes of the Silmarillion, and it definitely helps to clarify a lot of the complexities and questions that one may have about the narrative. On the other hand, it pretty much spoils a lot of the moments and outcomes in certain tales. So my advice would be to use your own judgment. If this is your first time reading the Silmarillion, you can either go through the letter to absorb some of the overall picture, but if you don't want to come across any spoilers about the content within the book, it's best to avoid it and to read it only after you've done your first read of the book. Okay, so that's it for the introduction. Now let's start tackling the book itself. So first of all, let us dive into the metaphysically beautiful and transcendental work of the Ainulindale, which translates into the music of the Ainur. So if you'd like, you can pause this video, read the first work in the Silmarillion, the Ainulindale, and then come back to this video so you can discuss together and analyze the text. So let's start by reading the opening lines of the Ainulindale. There was Eru, the one who in Arda is called Ilúvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. So here we have Eru Ilúvatar, this central godlike figure who creates these angelic spirits known as the Ainur. And all this happens within the deep void and the so-called timeless halls. This is, remember, before everything else is created, before even the universe exists. So we have this godlike figure, Ilúvatar, who creates these angelic beings, these spirits, known as the Ainur. And Eru Ilúvatar announces a theme of music, so that all the Ainur can join together in this one major colossal symphony that announces the creation of the universe. And all this will help to fill up the void that exists in this heavenly abode. So as the Ainur lift up their voices in a vast chorus of sheer beauty and perfection, and thereby shaping the history of the universe and the world, everything that ever will be is weaved into this grand tapestry. So the Ainur work together to craft Ilúvatar's theme to perfection. But as we read along in the Ainulindale, one of the Ainur, in fact the most powerful of the Ainur, who goes by the name of Melkor, begins to weave his own themes into this grand tapestry of music, this symphony of creation. And what is known as Melkor's discord clashes with the rest of the symphony that is being produced by the Ainur. And every time this happens, Melkor forces the music to stop and to start again, with Ilúvatar announcing a better and newer theme every time. And this happens 3 times. Upon the third theme, Ilúvatar announces the word Ea, which can be translated as "let these things be." And by saying that single word, Ilúvatar creates the universe, creates the world, out of this symphony of the music of the Ainur. And therefore, it also includes the discord of Melkor. So the entire universe, the world, is created from good and bad elements as well. So the void in which nothing existed except Ilúvatar and the Ainur themselves suddenly is teeming with creation and with Ea, the universe. And within the universe is situated Arda, the name for the world upon which eventually Middle-earth is situated, and where the whole history of these books, including The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, takes place. So what happens next is that the mightiest of these spirits, of these Ainur, who will later on become known as the Valar, leave their heavenly dwelling to enter into Arda and prepare the world for the awakening of the children of Ilúvatar, the elves and the men. Now, Melkor, of course, who is the bad guy in all this, also descends into the world because he desires power and he has thoughts of ambition and supremacy. And what he does is he abandons the rest of the Ainur and he enters the world to set up his own realm. And the Ainulindale in fact concludes with the Valar's struggles against Melkor within Arda, as they attempt to repair the damages that are created by Melkor. Meanwhile, the time appointed for the awakening of the elves slowly approaches. Now, this takes place over thousands of years as the world is created and the Valar enter into the world itself. They battle against Melkor and fashion the world according to their original theme, the musical theme that they created in the void. Now, admittedly, Tolkien's use of the English language is at its most evocative and powerful, but also at its most complicated and difficult to interpret. Then again, given the subject matter that we're dealing with, so the creation of the universe and time itself, pretty much, whilst at the same time dealing with some pretty deep philosophical and metaphysical themes, all this requires some pretty sophisticated writing and use of the English language in order to convey to readers and put down in words. And that is perhaps why people find the Silmarillion, or term the Silmarillion, as being this complicated, almost impossible book, because unfortunately the first work is the Ainulindale itself. So when they come across such use of the language, it can be quite intimidating. But hopefully this general summary and analysis will enable you to reread this first work in the Silmarillion and to really absorb all the details and the intricacies in Tolkien's words, and to really appreciate the concepts and the elements that exist within this particular work. And before we close off this section of the Ainulindale, I'd like to read to you my favorite passage from this work, which goes like this. And it is said by the Eldar, which is another name for the elves, that in water there lives yet the echo of the music of the Ainur, more than in any substance else that is in this earth. And that's the Ainulindale. Congratulations, you're 1/5 of the way through the Silmarillion. Now take a moment, think about what you've read, and when you're ready, let's move on to the next work, the Valaquenta, or the account of the Valar. So this second shorter work gives us an account of the Valar, so the mightiest of the Ainur, who descended into the world, into Arda, and also provides descriptions of the different orders of the Ainur. So we've already established that the Valar are the highest and mightiest of the Ainur, and that they were sent into the world to help shape it and guard it. So let us go through the opening of this work, which incidentally is very similar. It's almost like a summary of the opening in the Ainulindale. In the beginning, Eru, the one who in the Elvish tongue is named Ilúvatar, made the Ainur of his thought, and they made a great music before him. In this music the world was begun, for Ilúvatar made visible the song of the Ainur, and they beheld it as a light in the darkness. And many among them became enamored of its beauty and of its history, which they saw beginning and unfolding as in a vision. Therefore Ilúvatar gave to their vision being, and set it amid the void, and the secret fire was sent to burn at the heart of the world, and it was called Ea. Then those of the Ainur who desired it arose and entered into the world at the beginning of time, and it was their task to achieve it, and by their labors to fulfill the vision which they had seen. Long they labored in the regions of Ea, which are vast beyond the thoughts of elves and men, until in the time appointed was made Arda, the kingdom of earth. Then they put on the raiment of earth and descended into it, and dwelt therein. So here we get a little more detail on the idea of the elves going into the world to help shape it. Here, in fact, in the Valaquenta, the opening few lines describe how Ilúvatar set the secret fire, which is the fire of creation, and which Melkor greatly desired it, because he desired to create things of his own, and set it within Ea, the universe, as we said. And the Valar, as they descended into the universe and helped create the world based on the visions that they had seen during the music and the symphony that they had sung before Ilúvatar, they descended then into the world to prepare for the arrival of the elves, the children of Ilúvatar. So the Valaquenta begins by detailing and providing description of the Valar, saying that there were originally 15 Valar in total, but then eventually that was brought down to 14, because Melkor, after his fall, was no longer considered one of them. So upon descending into the world, they took visible form, and therefore they took the shape of elves and men based on the vision that they had seen. Now, the 14 Valar are divided into two categories, the lords and the queens of the Valar. So the lords of the Valar are the following. We have Manwë, who is the king of Arda, and he is in charge of the airs and the winds of the world. Then we have Aule, the smith, who is concerned with the substance, with the materials and elements of Arda. Then we have Ulmo, the Lord of Waters. And waters here is a broad term for the seas, for lakes, rivers, streams, and all that. We have Tulkas, the valiant, the champion of the Valar. He's the fighter, he's the muscle. Then we have Orome, the huntsman of the Valar, followed by Namo, or more frequently known or referred to as Mandos. Now he is the doomsman of the Valar and the keeper of the houses of the dead. In fact, he's the one who prophesies and announces doom throughout the Silmarillion. We also have Irmo, also sometimes referred to as Lorien, and he is the master of visions and dreams. And yes, he shares his name with the elven forest kingdom in The Lord of the Rings. So those are the lords of the Valar. Now the queen of the Valar are the following. We have Varda, who is the spouse of Manwë, and she is the lady of the stars. Yavanna, the spouse of Aule. She is the fruit giver and loves all the things that grow upon the earth. We have Nienna, the weeper. Este, who is the healer of hurts and weariness. Vaire, the weaver and the spouse of Mandos or Namo. Vana, the ever-young and the spouse of Orome, the huntsman. And Nessa, the dancer and the spouse of Tulkas, the fighter. Now, eventually, after describing the Valar, the Valaquenta moves on to give us a description of the Maiar. So, what are the Maiar? In essence, these are also Ainur who were present during the Great Music and who also descended into the world together with the Valar. But unlike the Valar, they are of the same order as the Valar, but of a lesser rank, so slightly less powerful, but powerful nonetheless. And the purpose of the Maiar are to assist the Valar in their tasks against Melkor and to help shape the world for the coming of the children of Ilúvatar. Obviously, not all Maiar had the same good intentions. In fact, Melkor, when he is in the void and he creates his own discord among the theme, the great theme of the music of the Ainur, he manages to persuade a large number of these spirits, of these Maiar, to his cause, and they also fall under his dominion and follow him to his service. And among these Maiar, we also find Sauron himself, who is considered as the mightiest of his servants, together with the Balrogs. So the Balrogs, Sauron, all these are considered as Maiar spirits. And in the very beginning of time, they fell under the power and the temptation offered by Melkor. And here is my favorite passage from the Valaquenta. For of the Maiar, many were drawn to his splendor. We're talking about Melkor here. In the days of his greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness. And others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valaraukar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. And that concludes our summary and analysis of the Valaquenta. So congratulations, these two works, the Ainulindale and the Valaquenta, lay the foundation to the Silmarillion, and what will become the major framework and starting point of everything else that follows. So having read these two works, it's time to delve into the Quenta Silmarillion, but we'll leave that to the next video. In the meantime, what do you all think? Please do share your thoughts and comments about these two works in the comment section below. Keep rereading these texts until you get used to the language and to absorb all the intricate details that exist and that you will definitely miss upon your first reading. And after that, you may decide to start reading the first chapter in the Quenta Silmarillion of the Beginning of Days. After that, make sure to check on any updates from this channel. Hopefully a new video about the next stage and the next 2 or 3 chapters in the Silmarillion will be tackled. Hopefully the video will be released within the next few days, so keep an eye out on this channel. In the meantime, as always, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.